Hi, I'm MegZ, and we're going to spend the next few minutes looking at the theory of evolution, what evolution through natural selection is, how it works, and an example of it. So, what is evolution? Well, when we look around us, we see there are thousands of species of plants and animals. It is recorded that approximately 1.5 million different species have been identified so far. Here, we see just a few of them preserved in the Western Park Museum. But where did life come from? There are theories, but no one really knows. The theory of evolution says that life began as simple organisms from which more complex organisms evolved. The study of fossils, which by definition is any evidence of an animal or plant that lived ages ago, provides evidence that supports the theory of evolution. However, it doesn't prove it because of gaps in the fossil records. From studying the similarities and differences between fossils found in rocks of different ages, we can see how species have evolved over billions of years. Supporters of the theory would argue that the evidence is good, but those people who believe God created each species separately would perhaps argue that the fossil record shows a lot of organisms that are simply now extinct rather than an evolution of a species we would find today. This diagram is commonly used to try and simply explain how many different species of plants and animals link back to one common ancestor, a simple life form. So, where does the idea of natural selection come in? Well, enter stage left, Charles Darwin. Darwin was an English naturalist born in 1809. He studied variations in plants and animals during a 5-year voyage around the world. On a visit to the Galapagos Islands during his voyage, he discovered that the finches, a species of bird on different islands, were fundamentally similar to each other, but had wide variation in size, beaks, and claws from island to island. He concluded the finches arriving there originally had changed over time. After nearly 30 years of research, in 1859 Darwin published his book on the origin of species, where he proposed his theory of evolution by natural selection. This is essentially what he proposed for how it needed to happen. Offspring struggling for survival because of predators, disease, and competition. Individuals in a species showing a wide range of variation caused by difference in genes. Individuals with characteristics more suited to its environment, more likely to survive and reproduce. And the genes that allow the individuals to be successful, passing to the offspring of the next generation. One point that is clear is there is no suggestion in the theory that a species can choose an adaptation to suit its environment, as rather amusingly illustrated in these two cartoons. Let's look at an example where a species changed and adapted, in other words, evolved, over a relatively quick timescale. The peppered moth is an example of evolution through natural selection. Before the Industrial Revolution, the majority of the peppered moths were of the lighter variety. The darker coloured pepper moths were less numerous because they were less camouflaged, therefore they were more vulnerable to predators. However, during the Industrial Revolution, all the trees became blackened with soot coming from the factories. This meant that all the lighter coloured moths became less camouflaged, therefore became more vulnerable to predators and started to dwindle in numbers. The environment then changed back. After the Industrial Revolution had ended, the lighter coloured moths then came back. These changes only occurred through the passing on of genes through successive generations of moth. As you can imagine, this theory, which suggested man had descended from a simple life form through to apes, then modern man, was not at all popular and highly controversial. When first published, Darwin was ridiculed by many. Scientists continue to look at the evidence, however, and despite it still not being able to be proved, as the evidence continues to support the theory, so it has gained credibility. Controversy still rages today over Darwin's theory. There is evidence for it as there is for a creator God. Let's look at the hornet and hornet moth. One camp would argue that the two species clearly have a common ancestor and are now evolving into two separate species. Others would argue that this illustrates an example of an amazing creator who liked the look of one creation and decided to bless us with another similar species in which we could delight. It's hard to imagine this debate ever being settled.